Now, this is news that came down yesterday, but it's now official, introduced as the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. There he is. It's a young man, too. I got some information on him.
29.
Yeah, I know. And even more information on that. Ben Arbuckle, the new offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at Oklahoma. He is from Canadian, Texas. That great football program. He was there, had a really nice career. I saw Kittley making a comment about him. He took an unpaid job at Houston Baptist when I don't even remember where he was. And Kittley called him because his area code on his resume was 806, which, of course, is West Texas. So he picked up the phone. He said, Coach, I'll be there tomorrow. He took an unpaid job, eventually went on to be at Western Kentucky, too. But Craig, Smoak OU gets who they feel like will turn around what was that offense from hell this year.
Yeah, I want to go back to that super chat real quick. They mentioned that Andrew Luck is the GM. We never talked about that at all yesterday. That's a very interesting story in its own right, that Andrew Luck's returning to college to become a football GM for the Cardinal, and just find that fascinating in a lot of different ways. So curious to see how he does with that and how many other schools kind of follow suit, maybe with more high-profile name type of guys, but it's going to be hard to beat Andrew Luck. So that was really interesting stuff from the weekend that probably got lost in all of the other stuff from the weekend. As far as this goes, I think it's a good hire on paper. I mean, I've certainly loved what I've seen from Washington State over the past couple of years. Obviously, Cam Ward there prior to this season threw for a lot of yards, a lot of scores. This guy is, as you mentioned, also from the Western Kentucky tree that has been very prolific here as of late, and more specifically with Zach Kittley, and was a guy who helped coach Bailey Zappi, who had an absolutely massive year just a few years ago. You're seeing a lot of these Western Kentucky guys kind of start to fan out now, and I think that he's had a really nice run here as of late, and they need some dramatic help with offense. So based on the results, if he can bring over what he's been doing to Oklahoma, they look like they're going to be in good hands. Young coach and a guy who seems to really be skyrocketing at a torrential pace. So excited to see what he can do to spice things up and in some ways save Brent Venables' job, because as good as the defense is, that offense has been their big bugaboo the entire season, and there's going to be a lot of interesting decisions to have to be made as well, starting with Jackson Arnold. Like, what do they do in terms of, is that the type of player they want to keep running this offense, or are they going to look elsewhere? Does he look elsewhere on his own merit? But, yeah, Ben Arbuckle seems like a great hire. I know a lot of other schools that were interested in hiring him as well. His name was getting kicked around for, like, every open OC job. So glad the Sooners landed him from a fan point of view and from a media point of view. He's a guy whose name you definitely need to know, because he's one of those young coaches out there that seems to be moving up pretty quickly.
All right. Also, this is from TJ Eckert on Arbuckle, 29 years old, as you mentioned. He didn't even start calling plays at the college level until 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We've seen that. Who was the LSU offensive coordinator?
Joe Brady.
Joe Brady was a youngin'. Remember?
Who's now tearing it up with the Bills.
In the NFL with the Bills. And we've seen this. So these young phenoms, so to speak. Now, Brady went to Carolina. That didn't work out, but that doesn't work out for no matter who it is. Ask Matt Rule or anybody. But heck of a nice, at least it gives them a spark, Oklahoma, with what they have with Ben Arbuckle.
Well, that was the guy that Utah fans online,
Yep.
I mentioned this yesterday, that some of them seemed to think that they were going to get him, and I didn't know the reason why. I didn't know if I was missing something. I had seen his bio, didn't see anything in regards to Utah on there, and maybe it was just fans getting their hopes up, or maybe it was just trolling. I don't really know, but there was that last minute of Utah fan says they have a chance, but then a few hours later, it was Oklahoma. So they seemed to key on him quickly, has had a prolific offense the past few years, and I think that's exactly what they're looking for. So, yeah, a young coach who's, again, that's why I say remember the name, because if he continues on the trajectory that he's already been on these last, 3-4 years, I mean, he's bound to be like the head coach at freaking Georgia in about 3 years.
Yep.
I mean, the way that it's
Yep.
going. So, yeah, got a guy that's skyrocketing.
And today it was official. Zach Kittley introduced as the head coach at Florida Atlantic, formerly the offensive coordinator at Texas Tech. Get a note about him in just a moment, but from those Tech fans that contact or do stay in touch with me, one or two said that's fine. Some are mad. They did not want to see Kittley, but he's getting a head coaching job at Florida Atlantic. And it's another former staff member of Western Kentucky. You mentioned Bailey Zappi with Western Kentucky. There you go with Kitley, Arbuckle, Tyson Helton building himself a coaching tree. I just mentioned Bailey Zappi. He was released, in fact, right before their game, the Browns game. He's playing with Cleveland now, and now he was released before they played the Broncos on, I believe it was on Monday night. But a nice run for Western Kentucky and the branches from that program.
Well, Zach Kitley did a good job with the Tech offense. I mean, I know there were some things that you desired if you were a Tech fan, some things that maybe you wished were a little bit better, maybe some play calling you questioned at times, but I mean the numbers were there, and Taj Brooks had himself a hell of a 2 years under Kitley. Now he'd probably have a hell of a 2 years under just about anybody, but point being, they were one of the top offenses in the league. Scoring points was not the issue. I don't think it was the reason why they're not 9 or 10 game winners. I mean, after all, they're 8-4. That's pretty good. You know, they're 8-4 for any complaints. So it's not like this is a program that was just rattling off 11-1 seasons constantly. So I think they did a good job there. I think the offense was the least of their issues. And I was just surprised that it happened so quickly because I don't know. I first of all wasn't really knee deep into the Florida Atlantic coaching carousel and what that looked like, but just this thing got started so fast that they just named Zach Kitley. I was like, damn, I didn't even realize he was sort of being viewed that way already. But I was also curious about what connections there may be to just go ahead and go swoop in and take that job. But it's a head coaching job. I mean, that's the clearest and most point blank thing is it's his opportunity to launch his head coaching career. He certainly seems like a guy where that's where the trajectory was taking him. I know he loves Texas Tech, and obviously his father is a legend out there at Texas Tech. So I'm sure that was bittersweet in a lot of ways, but nobody's gonna question the fact that, hey, you got a big head coaching opportunity. Go take advantage and take that and see what you can do to build your own program. So interested to see who, if anybody, he takes with him. And for Joey McGuire, maybe a curveball you weren't expecting. Maybe you were. But you made the call on the defensive side, and now you're going to be making the call on the offensive side as well. So it's going to be a much different-looking Red Raiders team in some ways because, for one, Taj Brooks will be gone. So they're going to be immensely different-looking because he's like 80% of their identity, it feels like. But, yeah, they're going to have major changes as far as coordinators go. So a busy offseason in store for Joey.
Paul, Neal Brown released a statement today. He, of course, yesterday or a couple of days ago actually became official. He was fired after West Virginia went 6-6, 9-4 last year. Looked like he was in pretty good shape, but they, as we discussed yesterday, they couldn't win some of those close games. And in the Big 12, about every other year, you do and you don't. And we've seen teams that have gone 8-4 go 4-8 the next year because you lose a couple of bang games, and West Virginia did, and then it was a no-show in their final game against Texas Tech.
Yeah, Neal Brown also, according to John Bryce, Football Scoop, already, and this should not be a surprise, getting buzz as a coordinator for sure, but also for jobs like App State and Charlotte, his name is being kicked around as well. So there's people out there who wanted to be a head coach. Look, he was at Troy and did a great job. I don't think that his chapter as head coach is over, but he could decide to step back and take a coordinator job. And I think that whoever hires him as a coordinator, and I said yesterday, I think that Joey McGuire wouldn't be, that wouldn't be a bad move on his part to call Neal Brown and have him call plays out in West Texas. But, we'll see. So, yeah, he fought off the Boo Birds and the hot seat last year, but regressed back to the mean, and they're just in a spot where they had to make a change.
Yeah, they needed to make a change. I mean, that was clear. The fan base just had their fill, and they were tired of sort of mediocrity, 7-8 wins, whatever. That's just not going to satisfy the taste that West Virginia fans have at this point. So I think Ren Baker made the right call just for the sake of the fan base to kind of keep the spirit alive and not let this just continue down a kind of suffocating path where just everybody loses interest and stops supporting the program. I think you were starting to enter that area if you weren't careful. And look, when Ren Baker got hired, you pretty much started the clock on a new head coach. I mean, ADs want their guys, right? So he gave Neal Brown a shot. He gave him a couple shots. He gave him 2 years or had him, around for 2 years and saw his full, repertoire and his full meal deal, and like fans, I think still was left wanting more. So they made the call, and I think Neal Brown, did you say Group of Five head coaching jobs? That's something that's definitely a possibility for him. Maybe even more so than the OC route would be going and being a head coach at a smaller school and going back to, kind of where he was before he was at West Virginia, something along those lines. But he's a good coach. He's done a lot of good things, and he won't have a hard time finding a job. If anything, he'll get to be kind of picky probably, if anything.
We have had, I don't know how many over the 4+ years we've done this show, but we've had a ton of head coaches on. And one of them was Dana Dimel when he was the head coach at UTEP. He suddenly passed away, went to bed Monday night, did not wake up this morning, 62-year-old with a lot of ties into the Big 12, most recently a part of the Illinois staff. He was the head coach at UTEP for 5 years. He was at Houston and, of course, a hell of a player at Kansas State, and eventually joined the Bill Snyder staff in the late 1980s, right before they started to turn the corner. He passed away today at the age of 62. And I mean, everybody where he worked, of course, they put out different statements and quotes and all of that. Hate to see the news. Dana Dimel, one of the guests on our show back in the day, passed away overnight at the age of 62.
Yeah, that's tragic. 62's young. And I know it. Some people don't think it's young, but yeah, it's a young and left too early. And we had on the show. He was great on the show, and I've seen just an outpouring of support and sadness for his family. People really loved Coach Dimel.
He was also a head coach at Wyoming, and then, of course, at the University of Houston. Nebraska has signed Dana Holgorsen. This kind of, again, was one of those that came down late in the day yesterday. 2-year contract with Nebraska to remain their offensive coordinator. They've had players leave. They've had coaches who have moved on. Matt Rule's got a busy offseason on the eve of National Signing Day. But he now, of course, after taking over the last couple of games as the offensive coordinator play caller, will now get a 2-year deal. And I think even though they didn't score but 10 points against Iowa, not many teams put up a lot of points against Iowa, you could see a much more aggressive approach that was similar to what they did earlier in the year. They have problems. One of them is they got to get somebody who can be, like any team would want, a running back that can go the distance occasionally. They have a lot of work to do. They also brought in Kentucky's wide receivers coach, but that's Dana Holgorsen, the former West Virginia Houston coach, is now signed up for a couple of years.
Well, what a good deal for him. He gets fired by Houston and kind of just sits out there for a second and then gets probably some analyst gigs, like as far as just, hey, come and take a look in spring and tell us what we look like and those types of things. And then obviously, where was he before Nebraska? He was
TCU.
Yeah, TCU. He gets the TCU gig, and suddenly he's Mr. TCU for a few weeks, and then that ends, and now he's Mr. Nebraska and on a regular gig again. So that's the coaching world for you, and maybe something similar is in store for Neal Brown, or maybe he just jumps right, like I said earlier, into a G5 head coaching gig. He'll have options, but this is also a path he could take potentially. It sounds like that analyst gig's pretty lucrative, and it could also launch you right back into being in a coaching chair. So Holgorsen, I think, is a really interesting hire. I wouldn't peg him and Matt Rule for being like, a band of brothers or anything. I just didn't really connect those two too much while they were in the Big 12, but clearly they developed a good enough relationship to get this thing off the ground, and now to the point where they're going to continue it. So great for Dana and great for Matt Rule, and hope this is what can unlock that offense and what can unlock Dylan Raiola while they still have the opportunity to continue developing. And I say while just because it's, you don't produce, then like it's boom, transfer portal. I'm not saying that's any concern right now in Lincoln by any means, but yeah, you want to get that 5-star talent unlocked and performing at his highest capabilities. So we'll see if Holgorsen can get that done in Lincoln.
Yeah, you never know. Analyst jobs are now for getting close to $1 million a year. I think he got $600,000 for the 2 or 3 weeks he worked with Nebraska. And now he is, of course, their offensive coordinator moving forward. Now, how much does it cost when coaches get fired? Here's a list here. Neal Brown, nearly $10 million. Ryan Walters, man, that did not work out at all. $10 million. Tom Herman, $4 million. And you can go down the list. Mac Brown, $2.8 million. Mike Houston at East Carolina, Pogge 1.3, McIntyre, who was recent, Bloomgren. We'll have the new Rice coach on tomorrow. Scott Abel will join us tomorrow. And then you also have Bohannon, new, and then Sean Clark, who was recently fired at Appalachian State.
Yeah. Do you know what all those numbers add up to?
I'm going to
Like this Kirby Smart's buyout?
$25 million.
Less than Jimbo Fisher's.
Okay,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Less
Oh,
than Jimbo
absolutely.
Fisher's buyout.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
30.
And I say
or
Kirby
it's-
Smart just because that's the biggest name I could
Yeah.
think of who probably has a huge buyout.
I
Yeah.
just looking at the numbers off the top of my head, it's about 32, 33 million overall.
I actually don't think that that's anything too shocking. It's actually
Yeah.
not. I mean, Neal Brown being a little less than 10 million, that's really not that jarring, especially when we're conditioned now to see the likes of a Jimbo Fisher contract. So, yeah, that's actually not too terrible. I mean, it's a lot of money just being burned basically by schools in some ways, but that's, not too terrible. Although that Purdue one in particular, I mean, at least West Virginia got a few years out of Neal Brown and some fun wins and some moments and some draft picks. Like Purdue, that was a whole lot of nothing. Not trying to disrespect Ryan Walters, personally or anything like that, but that was just a very forgettable short tenure there for him. So that one probably hurts a little bit more because you're paying a lot for not a lot in return. But outside of that, I mean, even Mac, that's respectable. A little less than $3 million for a guy of his caliber towards the end of his contract. I mean, that's nothing.
Yeah, and he had been there for a while, so
Yeah,
he
that's
was
nothing-
probably towards the end of
Yeah,
it.
UNC couldn't just swallow whole and spit out and move on from. So, yeah, nothing too Jimbo-esque in this list of coaches, but this is the carousel right here, isn't it?
Yeah.
All these jobs, so we figured that it was kind of going to be a slower carousel. I think that's still holding true. North Carolina got it started from the P4 side of things, and obviously Purdue and West Virginia and also UCF in their own unique way has also rounded that out. But outside of that, that's not like too terribly crazy. I mean, there will be more changes probably after the bowl games.
But Ryan Walters at $9.34 million, it blows me away that he would have that large of a buyout. But
well, he was barely there.
I know.
Yeah, that's
I
why.
know. That they would also have that. But his agent did a great job.
Your buyout lowers the longer you're there, right?
Yep.
Well, you weren't there but less than 2 years, so
Yep.
you didn't have much chance to lower that sucker.
Daniel Acton, Mr. Mathematician, $36.387 million. Daniel, thank you very much for the exact number there. Also, the only job that was on that list, I think, that has been filled is FAU, right? Is that the only one that among those lists of player or coaches that were out was the one we just mentioned earlier about Kitley going down to FAU? Quintravian Wisner, we discussed him yesterday, the month that he had for Texas. He's named the Earl Campbell Tyler Rose Award Player of the Week for his performance against Texas A&M. The 186 yards and a couple of catches for 21. That's all nice. That's a nice day. The part that was impressive to me was that he had 33 carries, and they were tough carries. Rarely did he ever get knocked down in the backfield. There were a couple of those, but he was getting 6, 7, 8, 9 yards a carry on first downs that let Texas get ahead of the sticks and really just wore out that Texas A&M defense that was supposed to be so strong.
It's rare to see a player be named Offensive Player of the Week and not score, but
yeah,
I guess when you put up nearly 200 in a rivalry game that hasn't taken place for well over a decade, then that is a way that you can still accomplish that without getting into the end zone. And it felt like he scored 2 or 3 times in that game. Just those first downs counted as points in some ways. Just the way it ticked time off the clock and prevented A&M from having much opportunity. So, yeah, he's well deserving of that. There were some other big performances from Texas guys because that's what this award is based around. But I think his was in the most meaningful game. And I would say there's a lot of other big performances.
We're going to get to that.
But,
Well,
shout out to Haynes King because it's also rare to be on there for a losing effort. But I think when you go 9 overtimes or eight overtimes, against a top 10 team, then you deserve to get a little bit of a mention even in defeat. So, yeah, shout out to Haynes King for that Superman effort that we saw against Georgia. I just hate that he fumbled. And, by the way, we didn't talk about this at all yesterday. We didn't talk about any of the games. But, he got knocked out on the fumble, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
He got knocked out. That's why he fumbled there.
Yep.
And that's what it felt like. They got the chin button pushed, and just drop the ball. And if not for that, man, he would be the player of the week, and he would be the talk of all of college football this week with a win like that in 8 overtimes. But instead, he's the runner-up.
I don't think we don't go through all the games because we got to get into the week. But you're right. The hit that knocked him out, that fumbled the ball by 17, the safety, I think he was ejected from the game against Texas, a hell of a player. And I think he's a walk-on, or was.
Yeah, he was.
It clipped the bottom of his face mask. And there was not even for a second. Now, can you imagine,
Well,
Garrett?
it went to break.
Yeah, no, Garrett, you're the SEC replay guy in the booth.
Yes.
And you look at that play again, right? There was never a discussion. There was no delay. There wasn't even a review. Can you imagine? Oh, damn. Georgia has a chance to still win this game or go to overtime.
Well, I think
what do we do here, guys?
They were ACC refs, weren't they?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
No, I heard both. I heard from 2 different NFL officials. I didn't hear from them, but I saw them.
Example 1 million of why there shouldn't be SEC refs and ACC refs and Big 12. There should be refs.
Yep, officials.
That just call games, and they don't have conference ties, because that leads you to go, if that was an SEC crew, they're clearly covering Georgia's ass, aren't they? They're not going to review that for targeting. That's why I don't think there should be league crews. I know there's probably financial reasons for that and travel reasons for that, but that's a prime example when you have these meaningful rivalry games, especially late in the year in a game like that can be determined in playoff spots, of why you don't need, that was an ACC crew, or that was it just needs to be the crew, the college football refereeing crew, period. And that was a major mistargeting call that I feel like in any other game, in any other circumstance, that's getting reviewed 10 times out of 10. And magically, it did not get reviewed on Saturday night.
And
that was wild.
They may have ruled that it wasn't.
I mean, still.
But it was a direct hit. Georgia fans will disagree. Georgia Tech fans and a lot of others. I don't know what crew it was. It doesn't matter. There's targeting and there's not. And sometimes you see what you saw. And now, that's the Earl Campbell Award. Here are the coaches around America. They cut this list in a couple of days. Here are the finalists now of the Frank Broyles Award for the best assistant coach, coordinator, or position coach in college football from this year. Marcus Arroyo. There's a Big 12 name right off the top. You have West Point's Nate Woody, Dirk Cutter, Boise State, Colorado, and their defensive coordinator, hell yeah, after the way they turn things around. How about there's SMU, Scott Simons, their defensive coordinator. Pete Kwiatkowski is the offensive linebacker, outside linebackers, but defensive coordinator at UT. And former Texas assistant coach Tim Beck is on that list for Vanderbilt.
Yeah, interesting list. Jake Spavital was on the quarterfinalist list.
Yeah.
And didn't make it, but all these people very, very much deserve it. I'm interested in a couple names on this list, particularly Shannon Dawson is going to be kicked around for some head coaching jobs, and I would not be surprised to see him take one, because right now, I mean, you just had like the number 1 offense in the country. Strike while the iron's hot. Don't rely on the fact that you may not have Cam Ward next year. Like, go ahead, take your job now. Not that I don't think he was doing a good job anyway, but let's strike while the iron's hot. I think that Scott Simons at SMU is going to get a raise, and I think that Pete Kwiatkowski is going to get some looks for sure. And the one name on this list I want to point out is Tim Beck at Vanderbilt. He bounced around a little bit, but you get in the right situation, you find yourself back on this list. So congratulations to Tim Beck.
You see how many former head coaches are on this list? Al Golden,
Dirk Cutter,
Tim Beck. There's 3 of them right there. Former head coaches. Tom Allen was at Indiana. He was kind of a wild man,
Marcus
wasn't he?
Arroyo, there's a bunch of guys on there.
Oh, yeah, Arroyo is at UNLV, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So guys that have not done what they needed to do as a head coach got another opportunity and having success with teams that are all a part in certain ways of conference championships or more. Ahmad Hardy. I didn't watch ULM a lot, but for whatever reason, one day did. This guy can go now. 1,300 plus yards rushing. Number 10 in the country, a freshman, has entered the portal. Now, there's a lot of names. We're not going to go all over the names because we're not a newspaper. But there are a lot more that entered the portal today. Some teams more than others. But this young man, it probably means he won't be gone or out there for long. He is a stud.
Yeah, and That's where this is the most. The biggest names have not really entered that are going to enter yet. Miller Moss is probably the most recognizable name that's officially in the portal now, and he is. Caden Salter to a lesser degree, but he's not officially in yet. But yeah, this is the little part that makes it the most interesting to me, because now you've got guys from Louisiana Monroe. Like, let's see who goes and gets them. You mentioned Nebraska needs a running back earlier. I'm sure that's one of the guys that they'll call, because if he's one of the best ones available, they need a running back.
They have a couple, but they don't have a dude. Yeah. This guy might end up being a dude. Now, they in the game against Texas, I wanted to look at what he did against Texas. Obviously, with what UT did early in the year, 10 carries for 30 yards and led his team with 30 yards in that game. They had 57 as a team, but otherwise had a bunch of good games throughout the season. Now, how many teams, in your opinion, and by Shahan Jararaja will join us in 8 to 10 minutes from CBS Sports. How many teams that moved on from a quarterback that had somebody else on their roster that they wanted to be their quarterback, or it was just that time, like, for example, Jackson Arnold, Dylan Gabriel, how many of them wish they would not have let somebody leave?
I think that there are a couple out there, for sure. Most of them, it's just time. And then you have a situation like Georgia had with Justin Fields, where you really didn't want that to happen, but it did because of other circumstances. But yeah, I would say a lot of them that like forced them into it, or like the situation we're about to talk about.
And I'm not saying that the team,
most of them don't regret it, but this one is unique because he lost one game and was kind of, he
lost. Yeah, no, you're talking about.
Yeah, he lost one game as the starter last year.
Kyle McCord.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying Ohio State made the wrong decision, but look at the numbers he put up for Fran Brown, the head coach at Syracuse, including the win at the end of the year to finish 9-3. This is in the country. This is not like the ACC. This is numbers where he's ranked in the country. Now, they threw the ball a ton. Number 1 in passing yards, completions, attempts. 4th, though, he did throw 12 picks. 4th in touchdown passes. 28th in completion percentage, and he finished 37th with quarterback rating. The interceptions brought that down just a little bit. Before you flip that, Garrett, that's a hell of a year. Mm-hmm. He was perfect for Fran Brown and Syracuse. Here are the numbers from Will Howard. I'm not saying that either team or that Ohio State made the wrong decision, but Kyle McCord had a hell of a year. Will Howard, 2,860 yards passing. He had 27 touchdowns, interception ratio less, completion percentage better, and he was 3rd in the country in quarterback rating at 172.1. So Ohio State ended up with a hell of a quarterback. Howard ended up with many more yards rushing. He had, and plus the 8 touchdowns rushing, or 7 touchdowns, compared to McCord had 3. Now, and we don't have this up here, Avery Johnson at Kansas State ended up throwing for 2,500 yards, but he rushed for like 548. And Kansas State was ready to move on. They feel like Avery Johnson was going to have a spectacular year. I don't know if he had a spectacular year, but 3 quarterbacks, including those 2 from Ohio State to Syracuse, K-State to Ohio State.
It appears to have worked out for everybody, although Ohio State did lose one more game than they did a year ago. They still lost to Michigan, which was what Kyle McCord's sin appeared to be. Now, Kyle McCord did, I can't remember who it was. It was against Georgia Tech. Who was it against?
Oh, he had a game. Oh, my God. All over himself.
It was just awful.
Like 5 picks.
Half the interceptions that he threw were in that game.
Yep.
This year. So, yeah, it was really bad. I think 3 of them got returned. I think it was Pitt. 3 of them got returned for touchdowns. They're up 21-0. They'd had the ball for 4 seconds. They didn't.
Fran Brown walked up to him when he came off the field after his umpteenth interception for a touchdown, and he just put his arms around his shoulder, and you could see what he said. I got your back. I got you. But, yeah, it was a bad night against the Pitt Panthers.
Yeah, that was Pitt. That was 5 interceptions and a couple pick sixes that he had that night. But, I get the point that's being made here. I just think sometimes, though, you need a change of scenery and you need a fresh coat of paint. And, hey, you can keep winning with Neal Brown, and I'm sure if this next guy doesn't win, somebody will go, So you fired Neal Brown 4 years ago, and look at what he did, and now look at what this guy did, and then we'll make that comparison of why Neal Brown was better. But will that really tell the full tale? No, because it was time to get rid of Neal Brown. So I just think for like Ohio State, it just felt like it was probably time to move on from Kyle McCord. For Kyle McCord, maybe time to move on from Ohio State. Same situation with a lot of these other quarterbacks or players in their schools. It's not necessarily about production or this and that. I mean, it is in so many ways, overall, but I think sometimes, too, it's just timing and the guy behind you and this and that. But, yeah, I don't think Ohio State's going, damn, I wish we still had Kyle McCord. I don't haven't seen anybody from Kansas State going, I still wish we had Will Howard.
No, that was a complete severing.
Right.
They both went their ways. Yeah.
So I don't think anybody's going, oh, man, if we'd only had that, it's like, well, it wouldn't have happened that exact way because that's not how it works. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting to look at and good for those who move on and do better seemingly, I guess, than where they were. But there was a reason why they left in the first place. And a lot of times it's just everybody needing to move on. And so you can go off to Syracuse and have the type of season that you've had as opposed to maybe sitting on the bench in Columbus or going somewhere else and not being as successful.
Syracuse was 6-7 last year, made the coaching change. Fran Brown took over, 9-3 this year with an ice bowl coming up after their finish to close out the year. Last thing, college football standings are released tonight, right? It's next to the last. Next Sunday will be who gets in the teams, the 12 teams that get in the playoff, the byes, etc. We'll have the conference championship games this week. Ross Dellinger put it out there like this. Teams that make the college football playoff each get $4 million. That's per team. $4 million in the quarterfinals. $6 million per team in the semifinals, and then $6 million per team when they get to the title game. So if you have 3 or 4 like the Big Ten and the SEC will probably have, then you're looking at right there off the top, 12 to 16 million for each one of those conferences. And then it gets more and more on whoever advances. That's why for Boise State or for whoever wins the Big 12 or 2 teams or whatever happens with the ACC, with the difference in money, it's not going to get much better unless one of your teams makes a deep run and you bring in that extra 6 or 7 or 6 million a couple of different times. Then in 2 years, they're going to go to where the SEC and Big Ten, who already get most of the money, will get most of the money before it even begins.
You get over half of it just between the two of them.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm as big of a college football fan as you can get. I mean, I'm not like, I'm not like in the weeds the way that some college football fans are, like total brainiac about it. I'm a pretty big college football fan. This whole SEC Big Ten and like the way the table's being set, man, it hurts my heart as a college football fan. Like, I totally understand what's driving it and everything. I'm not stupid to the business side of things, but I just think it's such a bad deal for the sport that those two are just hoarding, 75% of everything and then telling everybody, well, you're lucky we allow you to sit here. And I just don't think that makes for a good relationship. And I get the alternative is, well, you call their bluff and they leave, but I don't know. At some point, I feel like it's going to get so toxic that may even be a better outcome. Now, they're going to not push that button until they absolutely have to. But, I mean, at what point is it even the same game anymore that you're playing? You already make tens of millions of dollars more. Now you're getting more on the playoff just by existing. And we're having conversations about the Big 12 even having a second team worth getting in, whereas we're having conversations about teams who could have 4 losses in the other leagues get in because it's just different. I just think it sucks for the sport, man. I think, I understand what drives it. And I understand the whole perception of the best teams and everything. I'm not saying that, like, the Big 12 deserves 2 automatic bids or anything crazy along those lines. But the fact that even 1 bid a year is in question and the other side's putting a line in the sand if they don't get 4 or 5 every year, like, what are we even doing with the sport right now? I just think that's insane, and it's only going to get even worse. Maybe if I don't know what the percentage would work out to. You can use this year's example. So I don't know if 29% is more or less than getting 4 of the members in. So maybe this is actually a decrease from what it is right now. I don't know. But 30% right off top is a pretty good deal. So that's just something. I don't know how that's sustainable, guys. I mean, the money gap. I just don't know how it could, because it just keeps increasing. And the people that play like, well, no, we love college football. It's like, no, you love your conference. And it's very clear what the two major commissioners are doing, but nobody can do anything to stop it because the threat of, well, we'll leave you. Yep. And it's just like the worst marriage ever. But, hey, be happy. We pay your bills, and we take you on vacation every once in a while. Or we allow you to come on vacation with us. But it's not one happy family. It's far from it. And I think that the control aspect of this is just killing a lot of the spirit of the sport.
I know, and they're powerful. They know it. They have a lot of land. They have all of the amenities, etc. And then they're going to get more. And we know that, but I wanted to throw it up there in case you had not seen this. Notre Dame and G5s combined, 10% of the overall 100% pie. We need to